Welcome back, everyone, to the third episode in our item series. So we're going to go ahead, open up Unity, figure out where we left off last time. And we have it creating a database for us when we open it up, if it does not exist. So we'll go ahead and delete that. And of course, when we open it up either through hotkeys or keyboard shortcut, we see it makes the database for us. And we've got our editor open, although it doesn't do anything yet. And we have access to our database. So we're going to go ahead and hook up the database today so we can actually, let's set it up so we can at least add something to the database. So in order to do that, I want to make sure I can view the database. So we're going to go into the database script first. Now I mentioned yesterday that we could easily come in and just make this a serialized field to view it. And that's because I kept it private. Another way we could do it is just to make it public. This is probably the most common way that people do it, is just go ahead and make it public and, well, access the list in the way that you would access any other list. And we'll leave that like this for now, but I don't like it this way. I don't like leaving it public for just anyone to do what they want with it. I like to leave it as private and then set up the methods to interact with it just in the way that I want it to be interacted with. So you can, if you don't want people to be able to remove things from the database, of course, you can abstract that out so they can't touch it. We'll get into that when we get a little bit more into the database. But for now, we're going to go ahead and just leave it public. We're going to jump back into our editor. We are getting a reference here. So we're going to come down to the on GUI. That's right. We have to use the immediate GUI system. So capital O, small n, and capital GUI. That's one of the most common errors that I get asked about is, why is my GUI not displaying? And just to make sure that it's displaying, we're going to go ahead and throw a label up there. And we're just going to use a regular GUI for this. And actually, no, we're going to use something that I don't have to set a rec for. So GUI layout dot label. And we have a few overloads here. Looks like we have content. Whoops. String text. We're just going to use this one here. I would just say this is a label, and I know I got a bit of a typo in there, but I don't care. And there we go. We can see our label is showing up, so we can get things to show up there. We'll come back into mono develop, and I'm actually not going to put my code in on GUI because there's going to be a lot of formatting that we're going to be doing. And I find it gets really messy if I just put everything in on GUI. So I like to break it out into different functions. So the first one we're going to do is, let's say, add quality. So it doesn't return anything. It's going to be private. And we're just going to call it add quality to database. And we're not going to accept any parameters. And we're just going to come up here. We're just going to call it from here. And just to quickly reiterate, it's because we end up with so much formatting code that it can get pretty messy. Like your on GUI gets used. In some of my larger editors, I'll use partial classes and break out the different basically tabs of your editor into different files. And we will be covering on that a little bit later. Probably not this one, but we could do it on this one. To set up I guess that basic theme when we start. Yeah, we'll probably do it on this one too. But for now, let's just set it up so that we can actually add something. Actually, before we add anything, let's go ahead. I think I made it public and saved it, right? Yes, we did. I just want to make sure we can actually see this over here for debugging, because as we add them, I want to be able to see them being added. So we'll hop back in. And since quality only has two fields, let's take a quick note here. We have name and we have a sprite that we have to take care of for the quality. So I'm going to come up to the top and create a temporary quality to hold this in. I guess it's not temporary. It's just going to be the storage container for us. So I'll put this right underneath the database up here. So we're just going to say quality. It was IS quality. And I'm just going to call it, we don't have to call it temp quality. Let's just call it selected item. Because later on, we're going to be using this for whatever item we select in a list as well. Instead of selected quality, now let's stick with item. And just to make sure that it actually equals something before we start using it, I'm going to come back down to the on enable. And I'm going to say selected item is equal to new IS quality. Just so I know that is actually equal to something. It's inaccessible due to its protection level. Let's go take a look here. We forgot to make it public. There we go. All the rest is, yep. All right. There we go. So now we have something to store in. So we're going to say, let's get the name first. We'll work with the name. Selected item dot name is equal to, and I don't want to get too much into formatting because the formatting I find makes the code really messy. So I want to get into functionality first, and then we can play around with formatting. But we are going to go ahead and use the, I believe there's an editor, GUI layout dot text field. So basically, we'll cover this. Let's get this one done first. Let's see. So we're going to go with the string. So we're going to say, isn't there one with a label automatically put in? Yeah, so content label, then texture. Okay, so we're going to say name, colon. Then we want the actual string itself, the text, which is going to be the selected item. So we're going to read from it and also save to it. And we're not going to worry about any of this GUI layout stuff. So we're going to go ahead and save it here. So basically what this line of code is doing is saying, hey, you know, we've got this quality set up, and we're going to go ahead and take the name, whatever we type in for the name, and store it there. But at the same time, we're also going to take whatever's stored there and display it. So let's go ahead, we'll save this off, and I'm going to take out the name. Sprite's a little bit different, but we're going to work with the name. Let's take a look here. We'll go ahead. No errors, so we'll start it up. There we go. And we see that, remember when we set it up that when you first create one, it's just called common. And there we go. And of course, as we change the name, it stays changed. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. Now the editor GUI layout, the editor GUI stuff is only available in the editor class itself. And that's one of the reasons why I like to use it while I'm doing the editor stuff. I don't have to worry about the GUI layout and the regular just GUI. You can use those in your application while it's actually running. But the editor stuff is purely just meant to be in the editor. And there's a few cosmetic differences. Some of them, like I think the editor GUI layout toggle looks a little bit different than just the regular GUI layout toggle. I'm not sure why there's three different systems. I would have loved to have seen just one, I guess, ideally. Well, I guess two, because the GUI layout stuff in comparison to just GUI, the GUI stuff, you got to define a rec and where you want it to be on the screen, how big and everything else, where the GUI layout stuff will just kind of try to fit things together for you. So you have that automatic formatting system versus the hard structured system that you define. But as far as the editor GUI layout stuff, I'm not really sure, to be honest, what's different in it than just the regular GUI layout stuff, aside from some of them just looking a little bit different on the screen. But there's huge documentation on Unity's website for it. If you really want to go read up more on it, go take a look there. We'll be exploring quite a bit of it as we go along with our editor scripts. Now to display our sprite, I've had problems trying to get the sprites to display in the immediate language or to the immediate GUI system. So I've been converting it to a texture and just displaying that texture. So in order to do that, we're going to have to come up to the top here and make a texture for it. And I'm going to use a texture 2D. 23D, yeah. And I'm just going to call it texture. Maybe we should call it selected texture. And we'll come back down here. And we're just going to take a look. See if texture, I guess it's that we need to get the selected item dot icon. We want to check to see if there's something there or if it's null. And if there is something there, we're going to take the selected texture. And we're going to go ahead and set that equal to being the selected. I just cannot type today again. Selected icon. And we're going to grab the texture for it. And I didn't use proper capitalization. Not the capitalization I'm used to. But that's great because we can refactor. All right, so if we have something automatically, if we have something saved to the texture, go ahead and grab that, the texture for the sprite. We'll save it off in our texture. And then I'm just going to go ahead and display it, but I'm going to display it as a button. So GUI layout dot button, and we're going to go ahead and use the texture. Let's select a texture. And I'm just going to close that off there. Actually, we're not going to bother with any of the formatting just yet. Let's go ahead and save that off. Let's go take a look at it. Open her up. And we're getting a button. Actually, let's go ahead and we'll set parameters for the box, just so it looks a little bit better. At least the size. So I'm going to come up to the top here, and I want to go ahead and define another constant. This will be an int, and I'm just going to call it Sprite button size, and I'm going to equal it to, let me see, what's size for our box is what? 4 by 3. Let's just do 46. Make it square. Save that off. Come down here, and we're going to go ahead, put a comma. We want to set our GUI layout dot width, and we're going to go ahead and set that to the, what would I call it, sprite button size. And we're also going to want to get the height here. So GUI dot, so it's GUI layout dot height, and we'll use the sprite button size there as well. Let's go ahead. We'll save this off. Jump back into Unity. We'll go ahead, see there's no errors, start it back up. And there we go. At least it displays. We probably want it a little bit bigger than that. Probably what? Maybe twice the size. So let's do 92. There we go. I want it pretty big. Eventually, when we start formatting it, we'll move stuff around. But for now, that looks pretty big. And I want it as a button, so later on, I want to be able just to click it and have it change. Now, we should set up some sort of default. Actually, now let's just leave it blank, and then we'll go ahead and just put the code in next to let the person who's making the edits assign that value. So we're going to come back up. Let's see, so we're adding the quality. Here we go with our button. And we've got the button being displayed, but we actually have to add some functionality to it now. So we want to be able to get when they click. So we encase it in an if block. And I want to go ahead and get a controller ID. What we're going to be doing here is showing an object picker. So when the person clicks the button, we'll just quickly go in here. So when this person clicks this button, we get like that object picker that you're used to in Unity coming up, basically saying, hey, go ahead and pick a sprite or whatnot. So that's the functionality we want. So to put that in, I'm going to grab an int, and I'm going to call it the controller ID. And this is going to be equal to the editor, GUI, utility, spelling it all wrong, dot get controller ID. And then we have a type to grab here for the focus type, and we're just going to say focus type dot passive. Well, let's see, what are the options here? Keyboard native passive. We're going to grab passive. And then we want to display this picker. So we're going to go editor, GUI utility, dot show object picker. And we see here that it takes a type. And we're going to need an object, a bool. So, well, let's just start off with the type. So object picker. And the type we want to display are all the sprites in our project. Not space. Not Sprite either. So we're going to go ahead, we'll display the sprite. And for parameters here, the object, we're going to pass in null. For the bool, allow scene objects, basically objects that are in our scene. I'm trying to think, sprites in our scene, do we want them to be able to select those? For now, I'm going to say true. This might be one of those things that we want to come back later and say no. We only want them to select stuff that's, well, not in the scene. And do we want to allow them to have a search filter? Whoops. What are we going to apply for the search filter? Search filter, we're going to set to null. We're not going to have it load up with a search. And then the controller ID, which is controller ID. Now, I know we could have made it shorter by, instead of storing the integer, just throwing that all in here. But I think this just, it looks a little neater this way. And it's just an int. You just pop that on and pop it off as you're done with it. No garbage collection needed. So let's go ahead and we'll save this off. I'm going to jump back into Unity. Make sure we have no errors. Let's go ahead. We'll start it up. And when we click the button, yay! So we're getting the sprites, but we're getting just the default ones that come with Unity. If we went and imported some sprites, these would show up as well. But for now, I want to keep the project as lean as possible. So you can go ahead and select, your background, double click it, but it's not saving it. Or at least it doesn't appear to be saving it. Let's work on that next. So we'll go ahead, we'll close this down, jump back into Unity. Into Visual Studio or Monodevelop, whatever your choice of poison happens to be today. And the next thing we're going to want to do is actually get the command name that's being passed in. And we can do this by string command name. And we're going to set that equal to event.current command name. We want to know which one is being issued. And then we're going to say if command name is equal to object selector update. So if they've went ahead and used if they've selected something, then we're going to say selected item dot icon is equal to, well, whatever they selected. Now we're going to have to typecast this, but we'll do that after. So we've got editor, GUI, utility, get object picker object. And like I said, we do have to typecast this to what we want it to be, and we want it to be a sprite. And then we call repaint to update the GUI system. I think that's everything. Let's go ahead, we'll check it out. If I forgot something, we'll figure it out. All right, so let's go, we'll select this, and let's do the circle. And it didn't update, so let's figure out what I missed. Go ahead, close this down, head back into our code. Let's go ahead, we'll check your action. Object selector updated. I've got the wrong one. Can we get a list here? No, I was just wondering if I could get a list of the actual names, besides going onto the website and looking. I'm pretty sure that's it. So let's go ahead, we'll save that off. Jump back in, start her back up. We'll select, bam. Now it's not going to scale automatically to fill whatever it is that we're making. So if we made this like really huge, it's not going to scale on its own. Well, look at that. We've got something there now. Let's go ahead and add an add to database button so that when we click it, it'll go ahead and add here and then I guess zero this out for us. Well, we'll close that, jump back into our script. And there is one thing I actually want to do up here first. If we're checking here, I just want to put an else. Selected. Oh, sorry, we want texture. Texture. Yeah, no, it's a selected texture. I just want to set it to null. I don't think we're going to have any errors if we don't have that. I just like to have it anyway. So an add button, we're going to go ahead, just put it underneath this button here. And I like to do it without any functionality first. So I'm just going to say GUI layout button. And the text, I'm just going to say save. And we are going to need some width and height. Well, no, it'll just span across the bottom, which is fine. That should be the behavior that's acceptable for us. Of course, I like to keep checking. Yeah, there we go. So when we click this, the functionality is we just wanted to add to the database and then zero out anything that we have here. All right, so we'll go ahead and case that in if. Okay, so click the save button. The first thing we want to do is check to see if our selected item is equal to null. Because if it does equal null, we don't want to try to put that into the database because it'll just end up corrupting things in the database. So if selected item is equal to null, I'm just going to return, basically pop back out of here. I do not want to try to put anything in the database that is null. Now, if it's not null, we want to go ahead and add to the database. So we can say db dot, and then we get all of the properties of the database, which, let me go ahead and take a look here. We have made it public, it's saved, so we should be able to access the DB here. So we're going to be saying, if we come up here, grab the database, which is this script here, and then we're going to grab the database in there as well. Probably should have renamed them better. So we're grabbing the DB in the DB. Let's actually rename it so it's a little less confusing. So we'll call this quality database. Not save that off, because we're going to be working on it. And in here, I'm actually going to call this database. There we go. Now, when we come down here, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. So we're going to grab the quality database, and we're going to grab the database inside of there. And then we get all the regular functions that we get from basically a list. And of course, it's add range. If you've worked with lists, you know how all this works. So we're going to go ahead and say add. And then we're going to add the selected item. And we're getting an error here. There we go, it's gone. It just took a second. Now after we're done, I like to take the selected item, set it equal to null. We'll go ahead, we'll save that off, jump back into our scripts, or sorry, into Unity. Go ahead, start that bad boy back up. Let's grab something, let's grab this one. Let's change the name to commons. We'll hit save and null reference. And I think it's because we set it to null. Might be a little bit too late in the day for me. Well, we'll try this again. We want to grab this. We're just going to call it Z, I guess. We'll hit save. And if we take a look here, unfortunately, I hit it twice. This is why I like to zero it out. So maybe if we just make a new one. Usually I set it to null, and I guess somewhere else I set it to be new if it equals null. It's IS quality. And I'm actually going to go ahead and delete the databases to get rid of all these. So it looks like I did actually save commons. And if we double click that, we get the sprite that we had selected. So we'll start that back up. Let's grab the check mark this time. And we'll do common A. Hit save. And we see it went back to common and got rid of this. We did get a null reference. We'll have to check that out again. Database, it is saving to the database fine. Let's do common B, or just B. I want to clear this. Okay, maybe that was that left over from before and I just missed it? It looks that way. So as we see, it's saving. I don't like the way we're doing it though, with, like I said, giving direct access to the database like that. So in the next video, we're going to come over to our actual database script. We're going to switch it back to being private, and we're going to go ahead and just outline the methods that we actually want to be able to allow people to do with this database. Just so in case you have a database, like I said, that you don't want people to accidentally delete stuff in, or maybe if there's a way that you're adding stuff to the database, you want to be able to add some validation into it that way. We can put that right into this script here. And of course, it'll be a little bit longer than one line. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.